The time is now. I'm Jessica Denson, and this is Lights On. We have a very, very important announcement today. We can absolutely not waste any time in taking back our constitutional republic from this authoritarian coup. The time for action is absolutely right now. I have been engaged this week in more organizing. I didn't think I was going to be doing this again, but I'm doing it again. I started off the week in DC at the 50-51 Not My President President's Day protest. I was in Washington, D.C. at the Capitol. Some friends of ours were around the country. And I want to start off today's show with a friend of the show, John Bonifaz, who was at his state capitol in Springfield, Massachusetts. I'm going to let you listen to a few minutes of his speech because the subject of what he is talking about is what I want to normalize every single day. It's what this entire country should be talking about. Getting this man out of office now. So we're going to start off today with John's speech from Monday, share some other protest footage from you, and then we've got a major announcement and an amazing guest, Kaitlin Byrd, coming up on the show in just a little bit. So here is John Monday in Springfield, Massachusetts.
My name is John Bonifaz. I'm a constitutional attorney, and I direct Free Speech for People, a national organization dedicated to defending our democracy and our Constitution all across this country. Yeah! We are here today because we dare to stand up for our democracy. We dare to stand up for our Constitution. And we dare to stand up for that bedrock principle that no one is above the law, not even the President of the United States. The framers understood this. The framers understood this. There's a sign over there, no kings in America. That is what they understood. And that is why they drafted into the Constitution clear guardrails, three co-equal branches of government. Article 1 for the United States Congress, Article 2 for the presidency, Article 3 for the judiciary. No kings in America. They were clear that we were not going to have any monarchs. And they put in an extra guardrail. An extra guardrail in Article 2, Section 4, the impeachment clause. Making clear that when a president engages in high crimes, abuses the power of the office, he shall be impeached and removed from that office. And at Free Speech for People, we launched impeachtrump.org. Over 220,000 people all across the country have already joined us in demanding impeachment proceedings against this lawless president. Multiple abuses of power since he assumed office just a month ago. He started with his emoluments violations of the emoluments clauses, making clear that he would not divest from his business interests all over the world, treating the Oval Office as a profit-making enterprise at the public expense. Violations of the emoluments clauses, abuses of power, impeachable offense. He moved on within hours, abusing the pardon power, pardoning 1,500 plus insurrectionists, his fellow insurrectionists, those he incited to attack the Capitol on January 6, 2021. Abuse of power, impeachable offense. He then issued an executive order pretending to end birthright citizenship, an unconstitutional order already declared unconstitutional by two separate federal judges. He has no business trying to take something out of the Constitution. If he wants to go about doing that, propose a constitutional amendment. He's got to get 2/3 of the Congress and 3/4 of the states to ratify. But he cannot, via executive order, take out birthright citizenship from the 14th Amendment. It's an abuse of power. It's an impeachable offense.
John goes on to list over 12 impeachable offenses that they currently have listed at freespeechforpeople.org. It's also at impeachtrumpagain.org. We on Lights On have been helping them get to that 200,000 number, and I'm sure they've well exceeded it by now because we have been pushing that campaign. It needs millions and millions of signatures. If the Democrats are out there telling you that it's a 5-alarm fire, which it is, they need to be taking their constitutional actions that they are empowered to do and that they are duty bound to do to protect our Constitution, to use the levers available to them like they did not on January 6th by rejecting his illegal presidency. They need to use them now. Governor Pritzker of Illinois gave a great speech today. He referenced that short period of time, less than 2 months, that the Nazis took over and dismantled democracy when Adolf Hitler was put into power. And that is an indication, that is a warning of just how quickly it can happen. We reported on that in the week after January 6th here on Lights On in a very excellent piece from historian Timothy Ryback, just to give you a sense of the urgency and how quickly things can be dismantled. We cannot expect to be able to resist this without using the most extreme and necessary constitutional legal levers at our disposal immediately. We cannot sit around and just resist. Resistance has to be demanding, absolutely demanding, that the Constitution upon which our freedom is based is actually abided by. And so we need to normalize the conversation about removing him from office immediately. This is a man who this week has called himself a king from the official feed of the White House while accusing our allies, our Democratic allies, President Zelensky of Ukraine, of being a dictator. Even the New York Post came out and corrected that the dictator is Vladimir Putin. And we know that Donald Trump has been if not an agent, an asset. He has been an asset of Russia for years. We literally have a man in our Oval Office illegally inhabiting the White House in violation of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, who is an actual Russian asset sitting in our White House. We should have no fear about normalizing the conversation about removing him, as he discusses with genocidal dictator Vladimir Putin how they're going to carve up the world. We must take our power back, and we must understand that we have that power. The power is vested in us. They work for us. Every one of those representatives, every one of those lawmakers works for us. That is how a constitutional republic works. The power is and remains with we the people, and we have to start acting like we know it. And that is why I am so honored to have been part of these movements, these growing movements, to have been spearheading this protest activity back in January with 14th Now. We really laid the groundwork for this. We were out there in the frigid cold when very few people were able to actually come to Washington, but the support from the world and the country was amazing. But we spearheaded that, and now we have seen it just blossom in the most beautiful ways around the country, with people standing up. 5051, this other grassroots organization, and again, they're like us. They're not seasoned organizers. They're not a 501c3. They're just citizens who said, we can't stand for this anymore. We have to stand up and do something. And major props to them. They have been throwing up these protests around the country, at least 2 major ones. We reported on the first one a couple weeks ago here on Lights On, and then I was at the one on Monday. And I got to tell you guys, I have been so both involved in that and then involved in the new planning for what we're going to announce today, that I have not been able to post more footage from what we did on Monday, or what I was part of on Monday at the Capitol. So I wanted to play a couple clips, including my speech. I gave a very impromptu speech. I wasn't sure if I was going to be speaking or not, but they invited me to. And I thought you guys would enjoy that, as well as some other clips from that day. So here is me at the Capitol on Monday.
This is what America looks like. Love to see all these American flags out here. We are taking back our flag, and this is our country. Anybody who violates the Constitution is violating our rights and has no legal authority to do so. My name is Jessica Denson. I've spent the last 7 years of my life defeating the tyranny of Donald Trump in the courtroom. And I led a protest here on January 3rd to 5th to try to stop the certification of this illegal president who inhabits that house in violation of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. He has no legal right to inhabit that office, let alone take any of the litany of illegal acts he has taken in the past 3 weeks. We should be demanding that our elected representatives use every legal lever at their disposal to impeach and remove him yesterday. On day one of his presidency, he violated, once again, he committed treason by pardoning 7 individuals convicted of seditious conspiracy. That is an act of treason. At a bare minimum, we can initiate articles of impeachment against this man and hold that standard. They think that these legal acts are radical. Elon Musk raiding the Treasury is not radical. Too radical to impeach this man a 3rd time? I've heard a saying, it says 3rd time's a charm. Let's try it. Now, this is not an official announcement, but 314 is 14.3 in reverse, and I would like to have on 314 this kind of showing in Washington, D.C., in protest of this illegal presidency, to say we are not going to let democracy die on our watch. Every moment that these people are illegally in poisoning our government, firing our federal workers, putting people in terror over their physical and financial well-being and the free world at large. Yesterday was the anniversary of Alexei Navalny's murder by the genocidal dictator Vladimir Putin. He has allies in the so-called Vice President J.D. Vance, who is trying to terrorize our European allies. We are representing the free world right now. The entire free world is being represented by us. And generations will look back to us to see what did we do right now. Thank you all so much for putting yourself out here. Please join me again on 314, and stand up every single day to reject this illegal presidency. God bless America. God bless America.
So I said that wasn't the official announcement. So you are here today for the official announcement. And that's why I was a few minutes late today. Thank you guys for your patience. It's been nonstop, just making sure we got the website updated. We got everything in order. I'm going to upload right now to the screen our logo so you can see it. But the event is March 14th, Washington, D.C. It is called Now DC. 14th Now 2.0 is Now DC, and we need the masses there. We need a historic demonstration. We need something that is too big to ignore. And you can find out all about it at nowmarch.org. Of course, we are still working on the actual logistics, the permits, all those things that we went through before, which will take some time. That does not happen overnight. So we need you to stay tuned. We need you to press the join the movement button to let us know if you can make plans to be in DC, and fill that out so that we can get a good sense of how many people are coming. We're also not directly affiliated, but we have affiliate kind of band of brothers and sisters in 5051, and they're going to help us spread the word about this. And so we're really, really looking forward to all of that, to making this an historic, peaceful, unavoidable showing in Washington, D.C. Give me 1 second here while I make sure I can pull up this logo and show it to you all. Okay, it's coming right now. But I want to also, just before I before I put up this next video from another speaker on Monday, I want to talk about one thing that's been out there, and there was a nasty amplification from Elon Musk of some misinformation about the 5051 group that was apparently on Libs of TikTok, that posted a Reddit that had nothing to do with them, trying to associate them with violence. Obviously, if you've been watching Lights On and you've been watching our coverage, there's our logo, by the way, you know that these protests have been 100% peaceful. They have been 100% nonviolent. We promoted the heck out of our nonviolence, peaceful approach when we did 14th Now. They are doing the absolute same. I can attest from being there on Monday that there was constant reiteration of that peaceful aspect, although it was hardly necessary, because that was the vibe among every single person that I saw there. There was a constant reminder about how to de-escalate and disengage if there was any kind of agitation. But nonetheless, as could be expected, there was some really unwarranted and misinformation amplification by Elon Musk yesterday about 5051, trying to attach them to a violent movement or violent intentions. And that is absolutely not who they are. It is absolutely not who we are. We take our stand. We take our stand peacefully. We're not going to be gaslit. We're not going to be put into fear. Fear is the only tool that they have. If they can make you afraid, then they've already won. But if they can't, you are truly limitless, even in the darkest, most ominous of times. I'm going to share actually just a brief testimony before I put this next woman up, because she's right in line. She's right in line with what I'm saying, that I gave actually in church on Wednesday night. I talked about something I had intended to share with you last week, and that is the concept of this whole earthly experience that we're dealing with being like a scene. And it can be a really ugly scene. It can be a really beautiful scene. But at the end of the day, we are here. We are the actors. As Mary Baker Eddy says, Earth's actors change Earth's scenes. We are the actors here to change this scene. And she also speaks about love and life being a divine adventure. And I will tell you, I've been through a lot in my life, a lot of challenges, a lot of unthinkable circumstances. And my intuition, after an initial feeling of fear when I'm confronted with any one of them, because of my spiritual upbringing, is to see these challenges as an opportunity and as an honor. It's really an honor that we are put in a place where we can overcome and confront them. And if we look at that, if you want to take it to a historical standpoint and see where we are in history and understand that this has been put on all of our shoulders to stop, and that we're the standard bearers. We are the ones who get to carry this torch. It is such an incredible honor. And none of us have to be afraid of taking that mantle, of stepping out peacefully, or of being redefined by the haters and the ones that are actually violent. You probably might have seen this today. Enrique Tarrio, one of the Proud Boys, who Trump just pardoned, was arrested for assaulting a protester. So that's who they are. That's who they are. We are a movement of peace. We are a movement of law and order. We are a movement of the Constitution. I fully expect to be embraced and supported by law enforcement. One of the purposes of the Now March from some of our co-organizers from 14th Now is also to make this a veterans march. So we would strongly encourage veterans to show up, even active duty military and law enforcement, not of course in their uniform. I know that's against protocol, but this is really, really a movement for everyone. I did a show yesterday with Greg Palast. Finally, Greg Palast came on our show to talk about the massive scandal of voter suppression. Another reason why Trump really didn't win the election. It's not just very highly likely hacked for him by Elon Musk and Russia, but he also had massive help with voter suppression efforts that deprived Kamala Harris of the vote that she would have gotten if she had been legitimately given the votes that were given to her. So in the show with Greg Palast yesterday, which I definitely recommend going back and checking out on the Jessica Denson YouTube channel, I said, Now DC is your movement. It is your march. If you're a veteran, this movement is for you. If you lost your vote or your vote wasn't counted in 2024, this movement is for you. If you're in a marginalized group and you're afraid of your rights being taken away, this movement is for you. If you're afraid of democracy dying on our watch, this movement is for you. If you don't want to lose your Social Security, this movement is for you. If you want to take your stand in history and not let an authoritarian Russian asset with an unelected billionaire at his side dictating your future and your freedom and your rights, this movement is for you. We need to see you in Washington, D.C. on March 14th. So please go to nowmarch.org. You can support us financially if you can't physically be there with us, but we really need you to be there. We need you to be there. I highly, highly encourage any kind of grassroots local efforts to get buses together, to get crowdfunding for whatever you need on a local scale to bring people to Washington, D.C. on that date. It's also been previously announced, from my understanding, as a National Strike Day, March 14th. So it's a really a perfect fit, because if you're not going to work, come to Washington, D.C., show up, demand action, demand Trump's removal. And I really, we can spend, it's kind of like not soon enough, but also very soon in the planning department, because it takes time to make sure we can get all the logistics and permits and, safety measures in place before it happens. But there's at least enough time to plan to get there. So please use that time between now and March 14th. Figure out how to get yourself to Washington, D.C. Bring as many people as you can with you. And also, let us use that time with all of the obscene actions that are happening on a daily basis to normalize the conversation about Donald Trump's immediate removal from office. His removal from that office is a constitutional demand, first in accord with Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, 314, and because of the illegal impeachable actions that he has taken from day one. I mean, just to go through a list of a few more things that have happened this week, the Wall Street Journal reported that Trump is planning to disband the governing board that oversees the USPS by executive order so he can take it over himself and replace the USPS or place them under the control of his Commerce Secretary. CNN is reporting that U.S. Marshal Service has been ordered to deputize members of Elon Musk's private security detail, despite the fact that they are not trained or screened for their jobs. So as a result of this, his security guards will now have the right to carry weapons on federal property and in federal buildings. Extremely dangerous. Of course, last night, Kash Patel confirmed as FBI director, releasing his enemies list. Unthinkable times we are living through. We don't have time to wait and see how this plays out or just to resist here and there. We must demand that it be ended. That is the normal thing to happen. That's the constitutional thing to happen. We, the people, must demand it. Take back our power. Here is this beautiful woman that spoke not long after me on Monday, speaking about the numbers that we need and the fearlessness that we have to have. And she's been out there, kind of like us with 14th now, without the huge numbers back in January, but she's been out there when nobody else is out there protesting with her signs. And I was so glad to be able to see her speak with such an enormous crowd of thousands of people on Monday.
Forward, my wine has always been two things. Where is the American people? I have been at the White House, at the Supreme Court by myself for 8 hours at a time. People would pass by and say, thank you for being here, but nobody would stay and stand with me. I've always been, where is the American people? There are 345.6 million Americans, 258 adults, 18 years and over. So we're not counting the 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, and 70-years who show up here, but 258 million Americans. We need 3.5% of the population to rise up to overthrow a regime. That means we're talking about 10 million people. We need 10 million people in the streets around the United States Are you going to bring your friends? We need 10 million people. I am begging the American people, as an immigrant who bought in, who was sold on America. I was sold on American democracy. I was sold on American checks and balances. I was sold on American exceptionalism. Right now, I feel bamboozled. I feel bamboozled because the checks and balances, one person in the United States, after 200 plus years, one person said, hell no, and nothing was done about it. One person said, I am not going to adhere to whatever policies. One person, and here we are, in fascist USA, right? We ever say, no fascist USA, yes, fascist USA, January 20th, 2025, fascist USA. There's a fascist USA. There's a fascist in the White House. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to say is, I'm out here with a lot of young people, a lot of people from marginalized groups, and a lot of people like to sing revolution, revolution. But every time people need to come out, they're afraid to come out. They're afraid to show their face. They're afraid to be on social media. They're afraid. You can't want a revolution and be afraid to die. You can't want a revolution and be afraid to die. I'm not saying just go throw yourself in front of the popo and get murdered. But you have to come out. You have to be one of the 10 million people who are needed to be out here. Please come out.
Please come out. Please come out and be wise. Obviously, none of us are expecting to lose our lives for this, although I think all of us, I mean, it's kind of like when you get to the point of doing what I think we're doing with this movement, you don't have that fear. You don't have that fear. And you're taking action without that being a deterrent, okay? And that said, of course, we need to be taking extreme measures of precaution right now. We need to be securing ourselves and our assets, all of those things. So please do not think that I'm not saying to do that. But at the same time, we can be fearless. We can be wise and fearless at the same time. And then we are truly in control. So let's just continue to act from that standpoint. We have the power. I'll remind you on Lights On, not only did Donald Trump likely not win this election at all, but even if you take the numbers at face value, he got somewhere around a quarter of eligible voting age adults voting for him in this election, even if you take the numbers at face value. No mandate, no landslide. The movement is with us. It's with we the people. And by the way, I said this movement is for you and named all those people a few minutes ago. Well, this movement is also for you if you voted for Donald Trump and you're starting to wake up and realize what a dangerous, destructive choice that was. We're here for you. We welcome you. As you know, here on Lights On, I am a long time gone, but I am a former member of the Trump train. So those of us who have woken up and seen how dangerous and harmful Donald Trump and his allies are some of your greatest advocates and allies. So we welcome them to now DC as well. Please join us in DC on March 14th. Nowmarch.org. Please click the Join the Movement button so we, as I said before, have an accurate sense of how many people will be there with us. Now, my next guest is Kaitlin Byrd. She is an absolutely brilliant young columnist who I was honored to have as a speaker. The first time we had a 14th Now event back in January, she was one of the most powerful voices about why and how Congress should have and could have enforced Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. She wrote a piece recently for Dame Magazine. She writes for Huffington Post, Dame Magazine, a number of outlets. Another excellent piece called Is Anyone Going to Fight for Democracy? This is what she says in her article. In the vacuum of power and principle left behind by the party itself, and she's talking about the Democratic Party, the only room left is for citizens ourselves to rise. Our Constitution delegates power to representatives, to senators, to a president, to courts, from we the people. And it appears that it is time for us to take it back. So on that note, it is my very great pleasure to welcome back to the show, Kaitlin Byrd. Kaitlin, welcome back to Lights On. I think you're muted, Kaitlin. Let's just click on.
Indeed, I am. I thank you so much for having me back.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
So we were starting to talk earlier, and first of all, I'd like to get your thoughts on just kind of like moving from where we were with 14th now to the failure to stop this insanity before it started, because we actually did have the opportunity to do that, and then kind of where we find ourselves right now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's always my little line to myself has been prevention is less expensive than cure. You know, whenever you stop something from happening, it's always better than fixing it after the fact. But I would also say that this reckoning has kind of been coming for a while, right? There are those of us who saw it coming and were like, well, let's see what we can do. And we asked, you know, we got out there, we got very chilly.
Yes, we did. We couldn't feel our feet.
We couldn't feel our feet. We put in the effort, we demanded better, and people decided, no, it's fine. Like we can figure this out. Now people are seeing like the things that we predicted. It did not take a week. Over on Blue Sky, where I post probably way too often, I have been doing this little, not every day, but like occasionally I will stop and I'll just put together just a short synopsis inside the 300 characters of a post of what has been happening. And I will say it is day 6. It is day 9. It is day 20. Like, just to make clear how short a period of time these things are occurring in.
Yeah.
How rapidly things are devolving. And in many ways, I think that this was the wake-up call that a lot of people needed, because they were just somnambulant. They were very comfortable. They made a lot of assumptions about how life works and how the country works and how the federal government works. And there was this fundamental lack of respect for how complicated and how important all of these systems are to maintaining our way of life, to maintaining our democracy, and to enabling the power that does come from us. And now people are realizing, if we do not protect this, if we do not fight for this, it is going to evaporate very quickly. And I really appreciate how many people have immediately gone out, not just federal workers who, oh my gosh, they deserve the most. Everybody who's fighting it from within the federal government deserves every support. But for some, even our elected officials to be like, oh my gosh, people actually care. And it's like, what did you think your job was? Just a question, you know, like, what were you doing?
I know.
You know, so I think that that's really potent. I'm sad that it took this. You know, I obviously wish that the almost 7 years I was shouting into the wilderness were taken more seriously. Cassandra Core forever, I guess, as a reference to the ancient Greek mythological priestess who was cursed to always be accurate and never be believed. With every part of her prophecy, she would prophesize things. People would be like, oh, no, that's not going to happen. She'd be like, I'm accurate. So, you know, I'm a member of the Cassandra Corps, and I understand, but I am really proud of how many people have realized what this moment could be and what this moment means. And I do hope that more people are going to show up. They've been showing up. I just think, again, like you said, it's important to show up more than once. It's important to have, you know, like 314 is a day where you can go out and you can be in the streets and you'll know that there are hundreds of thousands of people with you. But there's also showing up again. People showed up in Union Square in New York last weekend. We are seeing people mobilize in ways that we have not seen for a long time. And I think that there's real power in that.
Yeah, absolutely, Kaitlin. I hope you'll join us again on 314 like you did. back in January. I'm praying for warmer weather.
Oh yeah, if it's that cold in March, like we are truly like we have violated some law, you know.
But listen, Kaitlin, one thing you said at the beginning of your speech at the Lincoln Memorial, where we both spoke, was you did not go to college. You did not go to college.
I attended college,
Okay,
but I didn't graduate.
Okay, I say this because you are brilliant. You are absolutely brilliant. You know so much about the legislative process. You know so much about what can and should be done with our laws. You know so much about history. Maybe we can just start with, this being Black History Month. It's really kind of so egregious, all of the attempted erasure of Black history and the history of any group in this country who has struggled for justice. But can you kind of bring the Black history aspect to what we're living through right now?
Yeah, so it's important to emphasize that Black Americans have never lived in a proper democracy until maybe the last 60 years. This year, we're going to celebrate the 60th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. And that is the act that allowed Black Americans actual access to the powers of citizenship that allow us to affect elected officials, right? Part of the reason that our elected leadership is reacting slowly, so slowly, is because they know that voters are paying attention. People are showing up and they're saying, like, what are you doing? And Democrats in particular, but also some Republicans are starting to feel pressure from the phone calls, from the people showing up at their offices saying, like, why are my federal benefits gone? Why is this not happening anymore? Why are we losing these important things? Why am I hearing that my social security check might not show up? These are really important aspects that people have been able to engage with. And Black Americans have had, across our history, have had things more or less taken from us, but not been expected to not have the power to affect anything that is taken from us, not to have the power to influence our officials. So this last 60 years, this is a backlash. The Trump administration is a backlash. It's part of the reason there are all these attacks on diversity. There are all these attacks on interconnectedness. It's because Black people did start to become part of the fabric in the truest sense, in our citizenship, with that full power to address things. And what you're seeing is a backlash that is not just about oppressing people, but like returning Black people to subservience. And in doing so, and breaking that system, because we started to integrate, you are going to destroy all of the progress that was made for all of us. They're targeting smaller groups as a way of telling people, like, oh, you don't need to worry. You're going to be on the winning side. But that's not true. We are all on the winning side when we all are succeeding. When Black people are included in the process of democracy, that's when we're all winning. So if we're not all winning, we're all losing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, you're just making me think of the subject of the show I did yesterday with investigative journalist Greg Pilast, and he's the one that produced that documentary, Vigilantes Inc., that shows that actually 3.5 million voters were purged. Their voice was robbed from them, largely and targeted to be voters of color. It's absolutely unthinkable what we are living through in 2025. The results of an election that have eliminated the voice of 3.5 predominantly voters of color. 3.5 million predominantly voters of color. It's unthinkable.
I mean, it is, and also speaking from Black history, it's not. We have been through these kinds of backlashes before, right?
Yeah, but like the whole thing is that we were supposed to be making progress in an upward line, right? We're not supposed to be regressing decades, and that is where we are on so many fronts.
That's true. And I think it's really important to be aware of the history, but it's also really important to be aware of the backlash. So I think that, yes, we're regressing decades, and it's overwhelmingly because less than a decade ago, or less than 2 decades ago, oh my goodness, I'm aging so fast, Barack Obama was elected as president of the United States, largely on the back of support from Black voters. It was the first time in, yeah, pretty much ever that, Democrats have not been able to win the white vote. They have lost the white vote ever since 1964. That was the big blowout election. Lyndon Johnson, this is super famous. Lyndon Johnson basically just like destroyed Barry Goldwater. But the South, which had always voted for Democrats, this time broke and voted for Republican. And it was the beginning of this schism that you see. This red state, if you look at the red states, blue states maps, you'll see that it does follow along that Mason-Dixon line in many ways, and did for a long time. And Barack Obama was this flashpoint where it became very clear that if Black people maintain our space in the body politic, if we continue contributing at the levels that we were contributing, we would have a level of influence on who gets to be president, on who gets to run Congress, on how laws are made and whether they're made fairly and equally. And there's a very large contingent of people who were not okay with that. And Trump started his political career by suggesting that Barack Obama was not born in the United States, which was a racist conspiracy theory. And that through line of Black people do not deserve things, Black president was illegitimate, Black president is not really American, has metastasized into I deserve everything, I'm king, people like us who are born better deserve certain things. And they're going to expand it well beyond the groups that they're targeting. That's Black people, that's trans people, that's other marginalized communities right now who are under assault, but it's gonna get bigger. And we know that. They're fascists. They always start with vulnerable people.
What's so sick, Kaitlin, is while he's doing this, he has, he's erasing Black history. He's going counter to the progress that we've made in so many devastating ways. And then he's like, oh, look, I've got Tiger Woods at the White House. Or, oh, look, I'm going to rally with these Black gangsters in New York back on his campaign last year and say we all have something in common because we're being targeted by the justice system. Like, he exploits the Black community in the most disgusting ways and acts like an ally at the same time that he's stripping away collective rights.
I will say simply, tokens get spent. And this is something that Black people will say very obviously, which is that, like, we know who's in community with us and who's not. Yeah. We know the difference.
Unfortunately, Kaitlin, like, I say this as someone who I'm my father's from Ecuador. I've always been someone who embraces diversity in my life, and yet I fell into the trap of Trump back in 2016. And I saw all of the validations, the tokens that you're talking about, and I'm like, oh, but he's okay because of that. And I use that as this, not really justifiable, but I justified it for myself in that way, not an excuse. This is one thing people need to understand, that there is that cults and the temptation to follow an idol and a cult leader transcends culture. Like, very unfortunately, it transcends culture. And that is why he is able to this day, have people from all ethnic backgrounds that tragically still support him. It's a cult following. It's an idolatry.
It is. It's absolutely a cult following. It's absolutely a cult of personality. But I also want to emphasize that, like, there is no universe in which you're going to get 100% of people to agree on something.
Yeah.
It is very hard. I think we can all agree that there are very few things that we can get 90% agreement on in this country, correct? Like, even puppies. There's definitely 1 in 10 people who would be like, I don't know, I'm really a cat person. Who's like, just straight up like, don't like puppies. Even in that sense, 90% of Black people reject Donald Trump. So if people really want to focus on that 10% to make themselves feel like, well, everybody's included, are we? Because you would not expect a 90% rejection rate if that were the case. And this is not an attack on anybody. requires just a completely different change in your thinking, right? Because they deliberately design these things, and as a cult, right? You put up the big diverse group in front of you, right? To break people's understanding of like, but they're all acting the same. They all have the same goals. They all disrespect people. They all exclude people for other things that you can't see. And the things that you don't see are the ones that actually make that substantive difference that draws people. But while they put that vision out there, people are ready because they see it a certain way. So in order to interrupt that, you have to think about it differently. And that's the thing that breaks cult programming, but it's also the thing that protects you against being indoctrinated and in losing hope, right? Oh my gosh, he's got this big diverse coalition. That's the thing that we've heard this time, right? He got more votes. He got all of this other stuff. Look at the inroads he made.
Yeah, no,
right?
don't believe that
So
on
we reject that.
Yes.
But that message slows people down who want to convert, who are like,
Yeah.
well, I can't join because look at he does have other people. So, et cetera, et cetera. What you want to do is you just want to break that and say,
Yep.
8 out of 10 Trump voters were white. We can talk about a lot of different things, but that's the truth, which means that on Kamala Harris's side, Kamala Harris had the spectrum that looks like America. Her numbers look almost identical to what the American demographics look like. 60% of her voters were white. Okay? If you look at Kamala Harris voters, we look like America. That's what you should want your coalition to look like. Those are the people that you should want around you. And when you see people who are different, who are willing to put aside whatever does make them different and come together with you on things that you really agree upon, that's America. Yep. This is why we take, when I heard you say we're taking that flag back. There are so many times, especially in Black history, where they said that flag was not our flag. That flag does not belong to us. And we insisted upon it. We fought for that flag. We died for that flag. A lot of Black Americans have put their lives on the line to make America what it can be. And so if you believe in that, that's the thing that you have to invoke. And you need to look around and you need to be looking at people and saying, yes, this is what America looks like. It's big and diverse, and sometimes it's going to include people who maybe I didn't know that, or maybe I would never have thought I would agree with them, or maybe they really are from a different culture, or maybe they don't speak English super well. But you know what? America's for them too.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're talking about the other side and bringing people from the other side. I want to talk about who are supposed to be our side, Kaitlin. They were supposed to be our side. Like, what the hell happened, right? People in the chat are saying, where's Kamala Harris? Where's the Democratic Party? I had this conversation with you earlier today because all of us, I think a lot of us that were in 14th now were collectively disgusted with their failure to uphold their oaths on January 6th, including each and every Democratic lawmaker with a D next to their name. It's why you left the Democratic Party. I was already an independent, a pro-Democrat independent. I'm still a friggin' pro-Democratic independent, but I need these people to start acting like the values they pretend to represent. Earlier today, you and I had a conversation about some interesting things they could still be doing about Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. This man is still currently, as we speak, an illegitimate president without constitutional authority for anything he does because of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. This could be acknowledged by Democrats right now. We're in a crisis. It's a 5-alarm fire. Acknowledge the fact that our founding document does not allow the man to be there. Explain.
Yeah, so Section 3 is one of those things that it really is an experimental space because it was designed after the Civil War, and now we're in a new moment of incredible strife where we are seeing an internal coup against the United States government. And it's very important to recognize that what he's doing, the unconstitutionality, there's a difference between saying this person is acting in their role as a constitutional officer in a way that contravenes the Constitution, because at some point everyone everywhere has done that. That's why we had a court. That's why we have systems that say, like, oh, we disagree over whether this is constitutional. And you sit down, you have arguments, and then the court says, okay, this is what I've determined. So I just want to be clear that, like, yes, there are things that are unconstitutional, and they don't automatically rise to treason. It's very important to establish that. But Donald Trump has completely eviscerated Article 1 of the Constitution. Congress has basically decided to not do its job enforcing. And he is also not enforcing the laws of the executive branch. There's a person who has no constitutional authority, who's rooting around in our data, who has, they've not been cleared by any branch of this government officially. The only person who has the level of authority that's allowed to do anything in these executive level branches, this executive branch, secretaries, those people are all cleared by Congress. There's a reason for that. And Elon Musk could not make it through confirmation hearings. That's part of the reason that he's, holed away in the White House. When we talk about Section 3, we need to establish that this is not just an unconstitutional action. We're talking about an entire unconstitutional apparatus.
Yes.
This is an internal coup. This is an attack against the Constitution of the United States as the Constitution of the United States, not this one section got violated, or maybe, no. They're just saying there is nobody but the president. That's straight up illegal on a massive scale. So that's number one, establishing that. Establishing that can be done through the courts. It can be done, frankly, lawmakers could just say it. And once you say it and you repeat it, we have had this experience with lies. I don't see why you can't do it with the truth. This is an internal coup.
Tell me about it.
Repeat it. Say it. This man is overthrowing the United States government. And then that's number one. Number two, until he is cleared by 2/3 of Congress, he has no authority. Now, here's something really important. Every federal worker takes an oath. They all take oaths. The same ironclad oath that was built in 1862 for reasons. Sure, you can guess based off of the year why they decided to create an oath for all federal office holders, which is you promise to defend the Constitution of the United States. You make an oath to the Constitution, not to any given administration, not to any individual person.
Yep.
You make a promise that the Constitution is going to guide you. And that oath is at the core of Section 3. When you break that oath via insurrection or rebellion, which is what we're facing now, an internal insurrection against the United States Constitution, which has to be clarified. This is an internal coup. This is an insurrection. Now, every federal worker who resists this is now empowered under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to say, I can't do that for you. I can't enter that system. I can't do that because I took an oath to the Constitution. Yes. When you say Section 3 is in effect, what you do is you deputize every single federal worker still present in the government to resist to the max. They're not allowed to comply with illegal orders. They're not allowed to let people into systems, to allow people into buildings, to let them do what they want. None of that stuff is legal. Instead of having to resign to make a point, now you can just say, I'm sorry, I believe Section 3 is in effect. I would be violating my oath to the Constitution and thus would need amnesty. And so that's part 3. Once you make the declaration, right, we're in an internal insurrection. This man is overthrowing the Constitution. We believe that Section 3 needs to be applied, which means he needs 2/3 of Congress to clear him. Then you have to draft what an amnesty act would look like. Why do you have to do it this way? Because the Supreme Court is full of nonsense. That's why. This is a loophole understanding of the Trump v. Anderson decision. This is a big loophole that they left, which says basically Congress has unlimited power to enforce Section 3. But enforcement looks like an enforcement act or an amnesty act. we don't have the votes for an enforcement act. It's just not going to happen. And also Donald Trump would have to sign it, which the logic is not logicking.
And it's not explicitly mandated in Trump v. Anderson, just to be clear. There's a lot of dicta in that decision. But to go along with what you're talking about, they, of course, made abundant references to Congress being the body that has to be responsible.
Yes, Congress has to do this. It's Congress that has to do this. And they did get actually very annoyingly specific. They did say it was basically an enforcement act or an amnesty act. They don't have precedent for anything else. But then again,
and they also can't rewrite the Constitution.
Yes, so that's important to say. They were trying to avoid a certain outcome, and they got that outcome, which was Trump staying on the ballot. Which also there's a very good argument that he shouldn't have been on the ballot. Anyway, bigger point is
Getting
3.
back to amnesty bill, which was what you were trying to get us to do before he was sworn in, before January 6th. You want us to know Democrats could still be pushing for this.
Democrats can still do it. You don't. It does not need to be a successful bill. I know because I actually went into the cases that were in Trump v. Anderson decision in the footnotes. That's how dedicated I was. I went into the congressional record. I studied the cases that they brought up. And you know what? Congress did not technically pass acts for those people. Some of them, yes, they had a successful passage. And then there was another person who literally all they had was a House investigation and they just weren't seated. That's it. There was no passage of anything. They didn't try to get this guy cleared. They just didn't act. All they said was Congress was looking at it. We've made a determination, and it's the case. So Democrats do have the power to draft an amnesty act. Now, again, that does require the first 2 pieces to be in place. You can't just draft it and then be like, well, I guess we own the government now, because that would also be crazy. But internal insurrection, Section 3 is active. We are going to pass an amnesty act and then you can specify who is covered. The coolest thing about an amnesty act is that you can make it as broad or as narrow as you want. You can give amnesty to a single person. You can give amnesty to a class of people. And once you start giving it to a class of people, you can define what they did wrong. This is the big one. Once you start defining what they did wrong, everybody who falls outside of that category is now removed from power unless they are put into that amnesty bill. You trigger it, and then what? What are Republicans going to do? Say, oh, we're going to kill this bill. Doesn't matter. We've drafted it. Now you've killed it, which means that everybody
remains disqualified. Yep.
You admit that everyone who we just drafted is disqualified. If you let it pass, you don't have the numbers to do so. Right. Democrats can put terms in there that are like, this person has to apologize. This person has to resign from office. This person has to. We can continue going and put all that together.
Yeah, people need to understand failure on any level of an amnesty bill. Failure on any level is a success because it takes 2/3 of both houses to remove the current disqualification. You're not going to get it. Are Democrats in this environment going to advocate for amnesty of Donald J. Trump? Are they really? I don't think so. So failure on any level is a success because you're never going to get that 2/3 threshold. That is what I want to see, Kaitlin, the so-called superstars of the Democratic Party. You were talking about the Senate having more power to do that. Okay, Elizabeth Warren, where are you? Okay, Chris Murphy, where are you? Okay, Jasmine Crockett and AOC in the House. You might not have the tools to raise this in committee, but you sure do have a bullhorn. We don't want you to be rock stars on cable television. We want you to actually use your constitutional authority. Here's what you can start doing. Follow Kaitlin's 3-step plan. You better believe I'm going to put this segment out as its own video because I want people listening to this and being pressured to do this. This is a real tool they have.
Yes, and most importantly, when you put the first 2 parts do not require any legal structure whatsoever. Right. Members of Congress can go outside and be like, this is a coup against Congress? Like, I don't know what my Republican lawmakers do, but don't worry, we will have a plan for them to fix this. Right. This also forces Republicans to say, well, to acknowledge that there's a problem. Right now, what they're doing is pretending that they don't have the power. Oh, yeah, everything's fine. no, it's not fine. And to force a vote on an amnesty forces everyone to either acknowledge, well, no, it's not fine. And then, of course, it's a very confusing thing for people, particularly in that White House, people who maybe are more picture oriented and don't read. And at the top of the pyramid there, who might be like, well, why can't I get amnesty? Why won't you push for this bill? You have majorities in Congress. Like, sir, please stop asking for amnesty. This creates a problem for us because we don't have the votes necessary to get you amnesty. So every time you push for it, you make our jobs harder because we don't have the numbers. They have what, 219 votes in the House? They're not pulling that off.
Nope. You're not going to get 2/3. You're not going to do it. Kaitlin, thank you so much. I am going to make sure we're going to get you to DC again on the 14th. We need you there with us, and we need everybody. We need everybody there with us on the 14th. Yes, there are a lot of events going on across the country. You know, I will continue to promote what 5051 is doing on any given day, what anybody is doing around this country to show up. The point with 314 in DC is we need it. We needed a massive, unforgettable, undeniable showing where these people are. And so, the circle is kind of a symbolism. It's also Pi Day. So a lot of symbolism baked into 314, but we need to encircle and surround these institutions of power and let them know we wield the power in this constitutional republic. They are subservient to us, and they absolutely must uphold their constitutional duty and use the levers that they have right now. Once again, I will reiterate what I said with 14th now. If this democracy dies and they don't use those mechanisms, one of which you just described in exquisite detail for them, the blood of democracy will be on them. It will be on each and every one of them.
Yeah, and again, this is something that we can bring to our elected officials. The first two parts are literally just talking. This is an insurrection, an internal insurrection against the Constitution. This is an internal coup. The more you use this language, the easier it becomes for people to understand that their power, our power, is being overthrown. Congress doesn't exist this way. The system doesn't exist this way because we just don't like Donald Trump. I don't. And I never will. But that's not the point. The point is that he's contravening our methods of doing business. He's contravening the things that we fought for, the things that we demanded, the things that we elected people to Congress for. I didn't elect him to do that. Nobody elected him to do that. Nobody elected him to do what he's doing right now. Not anyone except his immediate inner circle cult agreed with anything because he didn't run on, I'm going to be a king. He didn't run on that. He lied to a lot of people. And even if we agree that he didn't win that election, which I personally believe, but like even in that case, the millions of voters who made up the margin that allowed it to get close enough to be stolen, those people overwhelmingly did not vote for this either.
Amen. Yep.
So we need to be clear that the first two parts of this plan have nothing to do with Congress as Congress. It has everything to do with us as the American people. We have the power to push aggressively. You guys need to acknowledge what this is. We have been overthrown. Congress being broken, that's us being overthrown. The presidency not working the way it's supposed to, that's us overthrown. That's not somebody else. That's not some fight among courtiers or something like that. This is about our power. And the more you internalize that, the more you speak on it, the more you repeat it, the truer people will recognize it. Because that's what we're asking people to do. We're not trying to indoctrinate people with lies. We're trying to do the opposite. We're trying to give them the vision of the truth.
Yes. I'm into that, and normalize this behavior, because what you're describing, the gut reaction of so many of these legislators, these Democratic legislators, oh, that's radical. Oh, really? That's radical? I mean, the clip that I played of myself on Monday with those impromptu remarks that got cut out for a minute, but that's what I was saying. Like, there's always this concept that anything that we do from a legal constitutional basis that maybe quite hasn't been exactly envisioned before is radical. But as they literally invade our institutions with unelected billionaires who want to tear everything apart, that's not radical. Like, we need to start setting things right here, turning things back right side up, and normalizing Radical, maybe. Visionary, maybe, but needed, absolutely necessary constitutional action.
We need to think of the Constitution as a rule book. And as they break the rules, we need to be looking for the loopholes that allow us to seize our power back.
Yeah.
If you were playing a sport and someone just blatantly broke the rules, you would never be like, well, I guess I just have to continue playing like normal. You'd be like, what is this? Remove this person from the court. Do all of this other stuff. You would
Yeah.
never just concede and just be like, well, I guess I just have to lose. That's where Democrats are.
Yep.
They have a lack of imagination. So let's be imaginative for our representatives until they understand where they need to be. And they are our tools. They are our employees. This is not, we provide their direction. The louder we yell, the easier it becomes for us to move them the way that we need them moved. And in this moment, we need them to be more dynamic and more aggressive than they've ever been.
Yes, 100%. Kaitlin, thank you so much for joining me today on Lights On. We know we can find you we can find you everywhere at Gotham Girl Blue. You're on Blue Sky. You have your website, Patreon, Gotham Girl Blue. If you want to find Kaitlin, find her there. She is daily full of brilliant takes and also an amazing writer at Dame Magazine and others. So please, please follow her.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. We'll see you again soon. On that note of amplifying this, you couldn't have missed, or maybe you did, who knows? But there's been some reporting this week about the platform that I left, surpassing Joe Rogan as a podcast. And I've just been thinking about this because they've been promoting the heck out of it themselves, as they always do. And one thing we can know from the massive audience that someone like, Fox News has, that it's not about quality of content that gets you numbers. It's about repetition. It's about really, really reeling in an audience. It's about constant content production, which this network that I left, does. And the question I really have is not where are they in their ratings, but the fact that they have that massive influence and platform. What the hell are they doing with it? What are they doing with it? To have that kind of reach and that kind of megaphone comes with an enormous, enormous responsibility, especially if you claim to be in the resistance and pro-democracy space right now. Calling out the bad acts of MAGA, which we already know, calling out how people are dissatisfied with the Republicans, which we already know, has not cut the mustard for us so far. We know that. We have to be really honest and straight with the Democratic leaders and people in that space who have the tools and amplify conversations like Kaitlin and I just had about what absolutely needs to be done. Imagine if a platform with 4 million followers was talking about that 3-step plan incessantly for constitutional enforcement against an insurrectionist, was talking about immediate impeachment and removal incessantly. Imagine how the conversation could shift. Imagine, this, if that platform had just called for recounts when I did and left their platform in order to do it. So think about that. Think about that when you think about their influence and what they could be doing with that influence and the damage that is being done when they don't. We will not stand down here on Lights On. This is the home for action. I need you to help me build this by subscribing to the Jessica Denson YouTube channel, going to nowmarch.org, and just amplifying, normalizing the calls for extreme, righteous, legal action, visionary, constitutional action, creative, fearless, courageous constitutional action to be taken right now. Don't go out there and clap when AOC and Jasmine Crockett give good speeches. Ask them why they're not calling for Trump's immediate removal. Ask them why they're not invoking Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. We have to raise the standard for our friends. We have to raise the standard for our friends, most of all. That's that. If we have any hope from these people that have sworn an oath to the Constitution, we must raise the standard. So we're going to do that in the streets peacefully on March 14th in Washington, D.C. I'm looking so forward to getting the involvement of so many groups behind this. This, like I said, now D.C. is for everyone. This is a 14th now organized movement, but now D.C. is for everyone. Please, my friends, brainstorm, crowdfund, get yourselves there on March 14th in Washington, D.C. We will have details in the coming, hopefully, week to 2 weeks as to the exact location as we pin down those logistics and do all of the very intensive legwork that we did before. Thank you so much, as always, for being with me. thejessicadenson.com and thejessicadenson.com/donate is where you can specifically support me. I'm still involved in a legal fight against the Trump campaign, as you know, and can definitely use your support there. thejessicadenson.com/donate, nowmarch.org. You can support the movement and join it there. Thank you, everybody, so much. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay fearless, stay strong, and never stop letting your light shine.